Okay, I'm glad to see Libby, Chris, Matthew, Sarah. And as I kind of been monitoring things and travels around the city, this Oklahoma City this morning, I know you guys have some severe weather out there and out in the West City. I think maybe out in Chandler, all in there. I kept kind of hearing reports about it. So I hope everybody's safe and okay there at school, and you're in good shape. If something should happen during the broadcast, take off. I can keep broadcasting and record this, and you can see it another time. And I've been over there before in the midst of sirens and all that, so I know that feeling, especially when you're on that second floor. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and get started here, and we're at week 7, and of course this is Virtual Tuesday for data admin. Now, we've been working ahead on the cases, on the lunches database cases, and we're going to go today and we're going to work on lunches database 11. Okay, and as you can see, we stopped here because this was a database 10, and we ended that lunches database 10, or case or chapter 10, if you will, is the end of our work with row functions. And so now we're going to start working, and as we do in chapter 11, with column functions. Now I want to take the occasion to say, all right, we're at this juncture in terms of our analysis and the extraction that we do. And I want to talk about it again to put it into a larger perspective for us. And I want to take us down into the wisdom triangle. Okay. And as you can see from it, and I'll try to take it out and maybe make it a little bit larger for us. But the wisdom triangle is, we start with wisdom. That's generalizable and reproducible knowledge. And that's really where we want to be, but that takes some doing. And I give you an example or some verbiage associated with that. All of our efforts here, whether it's the business problem analysis course, the MIS course, data admin, or even just starting with fluency, that course, are designed for you to understand how technology is shaping business, to be comfortable working with technology, and to be comfortable working with people who do, and to understand that technology drives much of what happens in business. Because first of all, it's portable. It can occur in any place in the world. It's obsequious for all intents and purposes. And number 2, because other than people, the most valuable resource that any company has or any organization has is information. The information content, this is something I've kind of been studying very informally on and off for a long time. The information content that's buried in a product continues to increase. The physical material continues to decrease. Let me give you a very simple example, okay? An automobile. Automobiles at one time were more about engineering and really more about putting stuff together and designing things than it was really not even designing things, kind of coming up with prototypes. And vehicles were very heavy. They used a lot of fuel, etc. Today, for example, and a paint job on a vehicle built 50 years ago is not nearly as robust as a paint job on a vehicle today. Vehicles today, in terms of their handling, their mileage, their safety, and their connectivity, are so far advanced And now the cars of the old vehicles are collectible things, and they're cool. They're pretty cool, but they don't possess the information content that's buried in that product. Now, as that continues on, then we're in a situation where then, in order to have that wisdom, we start to talk about knowledge. And that's information that's replicable and reproducible. Okay? You hear again that idea, I can reuse it. Information, when it's used properly, and IT, which is when it's designed properly, provides a company with almost a never-ending storehouse of wealth. Information that is current today will be archival or legacy data tomorrow. And the extent to which we can look backwards and look forwards is going to be something that will inform us. Now, today, things are going more and more to real-time collection of data. But when you hear the discussions out there about big data and that type of thing, often that is with archival data that we start to plumb to try to see into. So this ability of being able to build the cube, this information cube, all right, where I'm taking multidimensional pictures or shots, or I'm extracting data on a multi-level basis with the cube, is where we're headed now. And so we're going to start working with these cumulative functions, i.e. the column function. And of course then data that's usable, that's information. Okay, so that I wanted to take us back to that big picture, so we see as we make this transition from going from row functions to column functions. Column functions tend to be aggregate. They tend to work more with categories because that's what dimensions are. They're usually categories. Now, of course, obviously, and you've seen me use this in some of the other courses, but I'll just remind you, this is the cube. And my job as a manager, and you've seen me put this up on the board. Here it is, the quality of the decision that I make. And you get paid to make decisions. All right? You don't get paid to look great. You don't get paid because of who you know. Ultimately, when you're out in the workforce, you're going to get paid for making decisions or being able to advise someone who makes decisions. It's all going to come down to that. And the quality of your work is really going to be determined by the extent to which you push this boundary. And if you've seen this before, you can see we're talking about, this is pretty much like a truth table or a type 1, type 2 table you'd see if you studied statistics. Okay? And here we have known conditions and unknown conditions, known alternatives and unknown alternatives. And these are the risk level goes from really little risk at all, if I know the conditions are and pretty much know how to deal with them, to the high risk situation in which I don't have any real sense of the conditions out there. And I really don't know much about the alternatives. So we're at that juncture, and I wanted to remind you of these more big picture things. So as we work through the column functions, then you'll be ready to work with crosstab functions, and we'll, rather than mess around with the crosstab and Access, we'll go back to Excel and play around with it a little bit. We'll do some work with the Access SQL with crosstabs. It's not very good. Okay. Now let me stop and say one other thing about this big picture thing. Your value to any company or to an organization will increase with time. It should increase with time. If we've done the job we think we've done here, and that is to show you models of things, to show you templates, to show you the stuff underneath the hood that drives whatever. If we've done our job, your value will increase because you'll be thinking at an enterprise level. You'll be thinking like a business owner. You'll have a curiosity. You just won't show up so you can get a paycheck. You will be invested in that firm. You'll be curious about that industry, and that's what an employer is looking for. That's what investors are looking for. There's some of you probably say, I'd like to own my own company. Yes, you can. There are ways to do that. And there are people who put up money to do that. But trust me, the first time you don't turn in a report to them that they ask you for on time, or the first time you call with some lame excuse, or they have a meeting and you don't show up, you can forget it. You won't see their money. So the habits that get created in college and high school, those habits that get created, okay? And I'm looking today at a class of us, I don't know, I think we've got 35 people in the class, 26. I see 11 of us here, okay? The 11 of you who are here, great. I'm glad you're here, whether you're online somewhere. The others, where are they? Well, I can tell you this. Many of them will be the same people who later on in life are going to want to blame somebody because they haven't been successful. About 95% of success is simply showing up and doing your homework. And it's so easy that a lot of people miss it. So I can tell you in any given class I teach, I have some very smart people, but they're too smart often because they haven't understood some of the stuff you got to do, like do your job, show up, be on time. Now, I understand that can grate on your nerves, but I can tell you for a fact, you could have all of the wisdom and knowledge, you could learn all of it, you could make straight A's, and if you're not dependable and you don't have a passion for where you work, they're going to find somebody who does. That's the nature of the economy you're going into, the most competitive workforce that you've ever been in. And all I can say is if you'd like an example, I will tell you can take me. I've got a bachelor's degree. I've got 4 postgraduate degrees. I've done work, postdoctoral work at MIT. I've worked with major 100 companies. I'm still taking courses. I'm still trying to learn new things. Why? Because that's what's demanded of me. So if I'm not doing that, I'm standing still and I'm not of any good to you. If I'm not conversing with people out in industry or conversing with people at different organizations about their databases, I don't need to be teaching a course. And I wouldn't teach it if I wasn't. So again, that's that piece to help put all of this into perspective. Now, let's focus it on back down, and we're going to go back down to that issue of where we are today. And we're over in chapter 11, and we're going to start to work with cumulative functions, that is column functions. That's chapter 11 on summarizing data, and it starts over on page 400. Now, that chapter overview will give you a sense of some of the types of queries that we're going to run, okay, and what we're trying to get accomplished. And you'll notice if you look there on page 400 that you can see that we can do maximum and a minimum. We can do some counts. We can use the average function. And then there on page 422, a key piece of all of this is how do I deal with null values? What do I do? Okay? How do I deal with null values? And that's the bane of all database administrators, and it becomes your problem when you get reports full of null data. Null means nothing. So the question is, well, did someone forget to input the data? Were we not able to get it? Did we ask the wrong question? Whatever. And that one's one that's a tough one to tackle. Now, before we jump into looking at the database and running through some of those, and what I try to do is just kind of give you a flavor of some of these different types of functions, and here we'll be working with column functions. Before I do that, I want to kind of walk us ahead and let us see where we are. And I know that you get tired of hearing, you might hear from the other faculty too about attendance and being being into your studies and all that. Listen, if I didn't care about you, I wouldn't say it to you. And if I offend you, you have my apologies. But if you've got some friends out there that are slacking along, trust me, they're not doing themselves any favors if they don't show up. We're going to work through these today. I'm going to show you how they're done so that you spend your time understanding what we're doing as opposed to trying to guess what we're going to do. And if I didn't care about you, I wouldn't say a word. All of you are so fortunate to be at OBU. If you walk around today, look around in the doorways and see the names on those plaques where people have paid for those rooms for me to teach in and for you to go to school in. Look at the name of the building. Go down and walk through there. There are a lot of people who've put forth their resources so that you can go to school in a quality environment. I can tell you for the fact, if you went to OU or OSU, all of you are bright enough to go through there, but they don't care. You know why? They want fewer students than more. Because since they're funded by the state, they do their best to run students off. They don't want anybody there. The fewer students they have, the less work they have to do. And the more articles than they can write, because that's what they get paid to do. You at OSU, pretty much the same. It says nothing to do with your skill levels. It's just what they think they're about or what they intend to be. There's UCO. You can go there. You can be part of the crowd. There are other schools. And I can tell you that in those places, faculty, maybe even OBU, will not be as honest or blunt with you as possible. Now, I realize I'm not a perfect teacher. I've never even claimed to be that. I'm not even close. But I do know the information. I do try to provide it to you in the best way possible. And I do try to give you some of what the real world's like out there, because it's pretty tough. And I've done enough of these things over time to kind of understand what it takes to do that. Okay, now let's look and see where we are in terms of the course, and we'll kind of put this into perspective. So let me pop up here. And again, I'll tell you, what's exciting to me is there are so many of you who I know are very bright people and who want to do good for the world. And you understand that you can be a real witness to people in providing a good product or a good service, as much as if you sneak into some country where you're not wanted and you do a house church. You can have a far more positive witness. Now, we're here at week 7, okay? And I have here in week 7 a whole bunch of additional resources for you to look at. As I've said before, I don't give you a quiz on this. I don't give you an exam. I don't make you put together something or a paper. Then why do I include it? I include it because it's a test. It's a test for you to see if you will say, okay, I'm going to try to learn a little bit extra more. I'm going to see some other applications of databases and how they're used. Okay? That's why they're there. If I didn't think that you're intelligent people who might see something and go, man, I've got an idea for a business, or wow, that's a place I'd like to go work for, and I have some skills that I could bring to help them out, I wouldn't put those there. But I curate these for you so you can see how these are used, some opportunities that are out there to give a larger perspective to you as we run through and work with these queries. Okay, now next week is our fall free days, and you'll notice there's nothing due, but okay, I've got some more of these types of resources for you to take a look at. And you don't, again, I don't ask you to write me a paper or anything, but they're there for you to go take a look at. And I think certainly this resource, I think, is a fascinating one. And this resource that deals with GPS and mapping, we're just now starting to see locational data and being able to use it and see the biggest picture that we can. And again, where all this will end, I don't know. It's an exciting time for you as a decision maker, because you are literally going to have more information at your fingertips than anybody could ever imagine. You're going to have more opportunities to find some insights that we would have never been able to identify, and you'll be able to work even in a small company with information on a scale that was really, even 20 years ago, was really just for the largest and most elite companies. So these types of resources, I provide them to you so that you can say, whoa, okay, well, there's some interest. And so there's some fun kinds of silly things in here as well, okay? But also there's some things that have some pretty profound things to say. General Electric, for example, who's been around a long time. Thomas Edison founded General Electric. You've heard of him. And their longevity is remarkable, but they have a secret in terms of how they've done it. So we've got there, and then we come back for week 9, and we have some assignments due. Now this is from the Sharda text, and just so that everybody understands, this is the one for the business intelligence text. And let me open up Vital Source, and here it is, the Sharda text. This is one of the required texts. And so I'm going to have some, it's Sharda is the main author on this text, and I've got some assignments for you to do. So you'll want to dig through your textbook, and this is the time you'll be starting to use it. So I'll go back over here to home so you can see it, but it's the business intelligence text, and now we're starting to work through it. Okay, all that being said, then you've got Lunches Database 10. You've done it. And how do you know? Well, each week after we do one of these, or 2 of them, I have this here for you, and I upload this. Okay, now we've got Lunches Database 11, and we're going to do some work on it. And it starts over on page 401, and you ought to have your book with you. If you don't have your book with you, you miss a lot of the value of what we're doing here, or what we're trying to get accomplished. And we're going to work with column functions. Now, as the authors show you there on page 401, they show you the data. We summarize all the data in the column, and he shows us a beginning table and that narrow strip, which gives us the result table, i.e. that is some aggregate or figure. And then the authors, as usual, begin to talk about all of the different column functions that exist, and they give you a table of over there on page 403, what's in Oracle, what's in Access, etc. And then they begin to walk through some of them, the minimum, the maximum, and they talk about the issue of nulls, when we ignore them, when we don't. So let's go through, and you get the Patrick text materials, and I've got that. Okay, and I'm going to open that up. And I'm going to get my warehouse out here. Okay, and I'm ready to get the code that I saved. And I'm going to run down here. I'm going to get the Access SQL for Chapter 11, and we'll start to work on it and take a look at the code that's there. Now, open this up. So we'll be working 11 here. Now I'll go ahead and go through that BizWax. Move this up here for just a second, and I'll make sure we've got Matthew muted. Okay. All right. Now we'll enable the content, and you'll want to save it on your desktop, all that business, so you can upload it when we're through. we're going to start with the code, and let's diminish this down for just a second. And we'll open up the Access SQL for Chapter 11. And we should be at this point now where I can just pop the thing up and you can start to kind of discern how this works. Again, this is a very simple, SQL is a pretty simple, it's a specialty language, and so it's fairly easy to work with. And you can see on section here on 11.3, all right, let's go up and find 11.3. We're going to select we're going to select those tables, pardon me, those dimensions or columns in the employees table. Okay, but in front of each of those, we have a function which is a column function, and we're going to get the minimum, the maximum, and their hire date, and we'll throw that in. I think we might have played around with this a little bit before, but if I'm not too worried about it, but that's all that we're going to do with this query. And so we just would take it in and toss it in the blender, and we'll get the output. Now, we'll go over here, and I'm going to click on Create. And I'm going to do a query design. We'll close that off. We'll go to the SQL view. And we'll just paste in the code. Oops, I need to copy the code first, don't I? That'd be a good idea. And we're going to run the code. Now note it says this is a select statement. How does the machine know that? Well, it knows its own code, and it gives you and I a visual cue. All right. Every piece of software in the world, no matter what you're using, is designed based upon the design that the people had at Microsoft for their productivity suite, and that is you will typically see a border that has areas or major functions and then broken down to tabs and then broken down to a tree. You might see some type of commands or objects over here, same thing over here, but you will at least get this no matter what you use. You'll see, and that's how it's designed. It's designed because you and I in this culture look left to right, down, up to down, and then we use the trees. Now we also want the visual cue, so it says we're going to do a select. We're running a select query, and that's pretty simple. Okay, and I'm going to run it. Okay, and notice I've got expressions in each of these. Now, if I wanted to get rid of the expressions, it's pretty simple. I come back down to the SQL, and here at the maximum, I could eliminate before I'm going to eliminate the comma. Well, I'll just eliminate the comma. I'm going to call it as max cred, and then put a comma. And I'll take a view, and there it is. And I've gotten rid of the expression. That's all. But the thing for us that's good. Now I want to save this. I'm going to save it as 11.3. Okay. And the nice thing here is that the expressions, they tell us you've done some type of mathematical operation. Okay. Or you've applied a mathematical function. And in this case, okay, we've done that. And we get Susan Woods. Now, this is the curious part. These expressions 2 and 3. Now, over in the textbook, okay, and this code comes from the bottom of 405. You see over in 406, the beginning table for the employees, okay? And again, we chose the maximum for those, and we got Susan because that is the first letter, the maximum, the largest letter there. Okay. Remember, every database by default goes from what it considers least to the smallest to the largest, least to the greatest. And in the alphabet, Susan's near the end. And the machine says, okay, I'll count them. I'll treat them like, they're not really numbers, but hey, I can count them. And I'll make Susan number whatever it is in the alphabet. And then Woods, same story there. And then we have the higher dates. And it takes those higher dates and just simply treats them like a number. And you can see the results set down there at the bottom, okay, for Susan Woods. Now, that's 11.3. And we had let's go back into the design view for a moment. And this is another thing that's important. Once you understand, this is going to be mostly this will be typically be the area where you and I work when we're making decisions. We're choosing, we're pulling up a table, and we're choosing some fields from that table, and then we might apply some criteria to them. We might not. We might use a function. We might not. And we get the last name, and we've got the hire date, okay? And we're good to go. So you could see that and what we might get. And the nice thing about this query, really the incredible thing, is that when we run the query, when you click view, all right, I'm taking a snapshot. I'm not saving a whole new set of data. And when I run it, I'm not. What gets saved is the code. Now, when you and I are here in the database, or if I'm working on out of the in the warehouse, it's going to show me, and it will give me pictures of the design view, the SQL view, and the data sheet view. But really, what gets saved in the machine or out in the cloud or wherever is going to be just simply the code. That's what makes it so powerful, because it takes so much less space. We can take the same information and work it over and over and over and over. Okay. Now, I want to take a look at 11 number 4, and that's over on page 407, all right? And so we're going to close. I'll save the changes. And I'm going to go back into the code. Now I'm going to look for 4.7, pardon me, 11.4. I'm sorry, 11.4. Yikes. On page 407. At the bottom, you're going to see now that we're going to select the minimum and the maximum. So we're working now with the minimum credit limit, the maximum for the employees, and then we add a little wrinkle here where the employee ID is between 202 and 206. So you can see, as I've said before, we just it just builds progressively. It's a lot like, I guess, when you took Spanish, French, or whatever you took in high school, what you've taken at OBU or elsewhere. Yeah, you learn words, you learn phrases, you build sentences. It just becomes an iterative process. It's the same story here, okay? And it's a pretty well-known saying that the number of dimensions you have and the number of records you have tells you at a base the number of queries you can execute on a table. Now, if you then begin to add functions in, row functions and column functions, all of that starts to become almost like exponential. So trillions of data can be harvested just every day. Yesterday in the MIS class, I asked everybody, how many Nikes do you think they sell every minute? Well, we did a quick search and come to find out they sell, on average, Nike sells 25 pairs of shoes a second. That's 1,500 in a minute. You can do the math. And in an hour, what are you talking about? In a day, in a week? That's an unbelievable number of transactions. So just to even carry those, you've got to have a way to finesse that in the cloud and code and high-speed computing. We've learned how to do that. Well, this is pretty easy to see, but we'll go ahead and just run the thing. And we're working for that. We've got some qualifiers there. And so we'll go back down into the warehouse or the data mart, depending on how much coverage this would have. If this is all the data I'm working with, it's a warehouse. If it's a piece of the data I have, it would be more like a data mart. kind of like an information convenience store. And so we'll run this. And again, it tells us we're doing a select query, and we'll run it. And here again, we've got the expressions. And what we want, and there over on page 406, the author's going to walk you through some of those notes, okay? And then on 407, which we just did 11.4, we could use some column aliases here to make this look prettier. And 408 shows you the beginning and the ending table. Now notice that we've become a little clearer in terms of our extraction, okay? Because we use a qualifier. And that qualifier was the where station. Now, just for grins, we're going to save this. This will be 11.4. Okay. But let's look back in the design view and see the criteria. Now, what we're doing here is we're going down, we're grabbing some data, and then we've qualified the data here by using these expressions, the functions, the minimum and the maximum. And then we've further refined our extraction here by saying I want it between 2002 and 2006. And we use another function, the between function. Between is kind of a mathematical function. It's a time or date function, and it says what it means between this employee ID and this employee ID. And that's all we've got going on there. So we've used, and we've run these on columns, okay? Because if you take a look at page 408, you're going to see the columns. And as we run the query, we're working with them. The whole idea of this, as I said at the start of this, is for us to begin to build that data cube where we can harvest, we can go down and we can do a drill down, we can do drills across, we can do all kinds of taking that data, almost like a Rubik's Cube, and just looking at it in a lot of ways. Now, the business intelligence text tempers some of this by saying, hey, you need to be able to get certain kinds of information because you've got to have that to work. Those are the KPIs, the key performance indicators. And so we don't get query happy. We run the queries that we need. We extract the data, and we might even take it and throw it over into Excel, or if it's a product like some of the Oracle products that are out there, or it's like SAS or SAP, it'll let you do both. But again, here we are. We further refine that query. And they give us some notes there in the bottom of over on page 408. Now, like the authors love to do, they love to take us on a journey. And so if you look at the bottom of page 409, you're going to see we want to find all the employees who have the minimum credit limit. Okay? And he's going to use the minimum function here, and he's going to walk us through a couple of steps. Okay? And so let's look at the code here and go to that 11.5 method, step 1. All right. The first thing we're going to do here in this step 1 is we select the minimum credit limit for every single employee. All right. Now that's step 1. Then he says, okay, we're going to do step 2. Where we're going to get the first name, the last name, etc., from the employees table, where the credit limit is equal to, there's equivalency operator, ordered by employee ID. Now, if you want to, you can go run the code for step 1, but there's no need to do that. The authors put that in there to show you how we begin the drill down process by adding in these conditions or criteria, these last 2. So let's run this one. And I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to put it over here. So we'll click create. Query design. Close it off. And we'll go to the SQL view. But you say, now, Dr. Harmon, if I wanted to, could I work in the up in the design view and just add in the criteria? You could certainly do that. You could work on the notepad, and you could pull up the table that you're going to work with, grab the dimensions, and then where you want to have criteria, work on a notepad and throw them in there. Sure, this is probably the quicker way to do it, but again, that's because we're using some functions. There's nothing that stops you from putting the function in, so you get that accomplished, but it can get a little bit unwieldy. So here we are. We're going to refine this, and here's the ending table. And these are the two people who have credit limits of $15, and we've extracted that from the employees table. And then you can see at the bottom page at 410 the result we get. Now, it should be apparent to you, and this is going to be 11. This is 11.5. We're going to call this 11.5. Okay, and the more data we have, the more the law of large numbers works in data warehousing like it works anywhere. For example, the more you go fishing in Canada, for example, the greater the odds you're going to catch a pike over 15, maybe over 20 pounds. Now, the biggest one I ever caught was 19, and it was a battler. It was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful fish. It fought for an hour and a half, and pike is really fantastic eating when it's fresh. But the thing was, it took me about 2 or 3 trips up there my first few times to kind of get the knack of it. So the law of large numbers works here. So when we talk about all this data that's out there, structured and unstructured data and pulling it together, there are so many insights and so many things we can learn. It's just a matter of getting the data set so we can grasp it and get into it, work with it, and work especially with these unsupervised types of data like tweets and stuff like that. Now, that's why you're going to hear the term, if you've not run into it already, what we call a data lake, which includes structured and unstructured data. And the BI text will probably walk you through some of that, give you some vocabulary and how that all works. Nonetheless, here's 11.5. We've done that. And again, we've done simple count functions using minimum and maximum. Now, over on 11.6, they want us to do a count, okay, and to get a count for the number of rows. So I'm gonna go back here into the text, all right, and here's 11.6. Now let's talk about it real quickly. We're going to select everything from the employees table. I know that because I see the asterisk, but I've embedded the asterisk inside of a parenthesis which says I'm applying a function to it, and I'm going to count, okay? And then I'm going to count the last name, the hire date, the manager ID from the employees table. So I'm just getting a simple count, all right? That's all that we're doing, so we'll copy that. We'll throw it in here, create, redesign, SQL, and let's run it. Now again, notice we got some feedback. We're running a query, excuse me. And here we are, and this gives us the number of the count, okay, of rows, the number of last names. You say, why would I run this? Well, if I know that I have 300 employees, for example, and I run a query just like I run this type of query, and I find that I have 300 records, but I have some data missing, then that's problematic, okay? And if you look at the bottom of page 412, what the authors did there is they applied pseudonyms or column aliases for the manager ID count, and the hire date count, but we've got last names and we've got their last name, and then we have the count. We'll go back down here, we'll see into the design view, and you'll see what I'm talking about, okay? Now, we count the last name, the date, but we've got some stuff missing. And if you look back up at the employees table there in page 412, you'll see we've got some null values. We have Carol Rose, who's in the accounting department, and there are no values. There's no value in there. All right. Now, if you have good referential integrity or good data integrity, you simply that record would never save because it has null values. You'd want to know why don't we have a manager ID for her, and there's Susan Brown as well, and say, well, I don't know, or well, she's an executive. Well, then we need a manager ID for executives, just like we do for every other department. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm looking at for sure. And this is what and when I come back up here, this is what we call an anomalous set. You said, what do you mean? Well, I know, okay, for example, I've got these 10 records, but I've got some records that are incomplete because I can just simply see the result. And now on employee names and so forth, this kind of thing is bad. It's really not good news if you're checking your general journal for the number of transactions, and you find, well, there's some stuff missing here, okay? And not good at all. So we've worked through those, and we're going to call this 11.6. And if you want, you could go in and you could put it. You could put in the column alias, and that would be this as whatever. But we're okay as long as you know. I could go back in here, and again, we'll go into the SQL view, and I could get rid of that comma there and put as, they use as the count last name. Now, you'll run into some problems with that. I have, when I've tried to do count last name, it kind of got wacky on me. So you could try last name count or something like that and see what works for it. Well, I'll just do this real quickly. As, and that's underscore up name, and I'm going to add that in count, and let's see what happens. And it gave me the last, so I now have a descriptor. That's all. Okay. 11.7 over on page 414. Let's look at that here in the code. We'll talk about it real quickly. And here in 11.7, we're selecting, here we're adding in the column aliases. That's all we're doing here. And we're introducing a couple of new functions, the sum function and the average function. And we're pulling it from a new table. So let's just go ahead and run this. We've got some wrinkles here. Okay. So we can copy that, and then we'll go back in, create, and we'll do the query design. Now there's a business case for running this query. If there isn't, then I would want to know why I'm running it, because it takes time, takes thought, and if you do 50 irrelevant queries a week, you're doing 2,500 of them a year, or how many ever weeks you could work that into. So the math tells you you're wasting some time. So you want to make sure that you've got a business case for these. All right, and that's why I again talk about key performance indicators. What is it I need to know? The dashboard and all that business. It's all has a purpose. If it doesn't, I'm wasting my time and the time of whoever's paying for the system, etc. Well, we're going to run this, all right, and you'll see that we've got some interesting data here, all right. And if you take a look, for example, we've got the column count, okay, and the row count, but then we have maximum in column 2 as the maximum, the minimum in column, the minimum as min, the sum as sum, and the average as average. And if you look at if you look there on page 414, you're going to see that table, okay? And you're going to see that we get null data. Now, the one thing that could be counted was the number of rows, but everything else is null. So it's just to just show us some more about the column functions, and that we can even get the distinct rows if we need to. So that's 11.7, and we'll just save that as such. Okay, now over on page 412 and 413, pardon me, at 413 they give you using the count distinct so that you don't duplicate data. They give you a beginning table at the top of 416, all right? And then they use the Oracle, and basically it says we're going to select the count distinct from employees. So they're going to get, they're going to count, they're not going to duplicate anything. They're just going to do the select. We're going to select distinct the manager ID, because we want to look at one particular manager ID. Now, what it probably would make more sense, and the authors are wanting to show you about null values and all that. The real in the real world, what you would do is you get the column IDs, and if you have, let's say you got 1,000 of these or 2,000, which is nothing incredible, you'll be working with data the size. Dump them into somewhere where you can filter them easily, all right, and then just pull those out, because that's what you're trying to do here. Now, when there at the bottom of 416, the author shows you this, a step 1 and a step 2, which is a workaround that issue of being able to use the wanting to use the select distinct and the count functions together. So you can see there in that one case, Oracle's a little bit easier to use. So you've got a couple of steps there that you do, and that's 11.8 workaround 1, 11.8 workaround 2. And you can see those. I don't think there's any need for you to run them, because I think you get it. Distinct means I want all unique rows. That's all you're talking about. Now, you say, well, if I have a primary key and say it's a number, wouldn't I get that anyway? Yes, I would. But notice that we applied that distinct function, count distinct, or we did the workaround like we do in access of counts, and then use the distinct in 2 different queries. Notice I'm working with dimensions over here that are not primary keys. Now, they could be foreign keys buried from another table, and it will give me some type of result where I'm linking up. 418, they walk you through concatenation with or without separators, and they show you these columns, and they show the Oracle SQL to run, and they show you the Access SQL, the workarounds, step 1 and 2, where you create a temporary table. And that's over on page 419. And there you can go down to this, I think, is going to be 11.9. You'll notice we have to do these workarounds. And that's one. And there are some ways in which Oracle is superior code. It just handles some things better. Not always, but we're seeing some of that. So we've got to run a query and then run another query on it. Okay. And to get the information that we want to get. So we've got the workaround, and then we have a second step, and then we get our result. We do quite a bit of work just to get that one result, but you know, we can do that. We'll do the workaround one. Doesn't matter. And we'll pull that. Great. And we're going to do the query design. I'm going to run this. And it says you're about to paste 7 tables, 7 new rows into a table. Okay. And boom. All right. Now notice something. When I executed the query, notice this. The make table went hot. It said, you've just made a table. All right. And that's that first step. Now, let's talk about that for just a moment. Well, it's here on the code here. Let's talk about this for a minute. We selected the distinct manager ID and credit limit, and we selected them into this section 1109 underscore manager underscore credit table. So we made a table. We selected data from one table and dumped it into another. How do I know? Because as I end this, it says into, here's the receiving table, here's the sending table of the employees. That's all that's going on. Then we have to do the second workaround step. All right, so we've got that done. And then we'll do the second workaround step. So we'll see the, here's step 2. And again, this shows you some limitations of this code. So we'll click create. But we're wanting distinctive data. Okay, and we get the expression 7. You say, this is a lot of work. Yes, I understand. Let's go back here for just a moment. The author, and here on this first workaround step, the author uses the author selects only 2, that is manager ID and credit limit, only 2 dimensions. Okay, but imagine if you have a table where the dimensions are your first name, your last name, blah, 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 and you link it into it. So you have a customer's ID, you have a table that identifies the customer. Then you have a second table that lists the customer's transactions, i.e. a fact table, okay? And then you maybe have another fact table, which doesn't look at, well, the transactions table, let's say the fact table has date, amount, time of day, all how they paid, etc. You can see how being able to do the distinct would say, well, tell me everybody who bought tell me everybody who bought, I don't know, some dish that they offer at Applebee's at the Applebee's in a certain city in Pennsylvania or whatever. You can see how we can start using this distinct and the count together to really go down and extract and get the number of them that I'm after. And it will give me a starting point. And so that's why we go ahead and we do that. But here we do the 2 processes. But what you're seeing now, is we're getting more and more, our results are getting more and more refined. Okay? We get more and more refined data. And again, if you're in marketing, this is the golden age of marketing. If I'm not mistaken, Dr. Green is going to offer a J-term course on digital marketing or digital advertising. I can't remember which. If you are a marketing major, I don't know if he's doing it online or the format, but if you're a marketing major, I'd sure think long and hard about taking that course. Because I can tell you, when you go out there, you're going to have people asking you, are you familiar with this? And if you're a marketing major, you could say, at least, thank goodness I can say, yeah, I've worked with Oracle. I have some experience with it. I have a little bit of experience with SQL. I know what SAS Visual Analytics is all about. And that company may look at you a lot differently than a candidate who comes and doesn't have much database or dashboard experience at all. Okay. I'm doing this, and I'd say also this is a shameless plugging my own courses in JTerm, all about ESPN, a fascinating course, fascinating company, and I have a course on business goes to the movies. A shameless plug on my part. Okay, now we've got these. We've refined these results down. Okay. And we're doing the process of, we're doing the extraction. So I'm going to save that query, and I'm going to call it 11.9. I think it's 11.9. Well, I've got the first query. I'm going to call this, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to say this as 11 dash 9 step 1, okay, and I'll call this 11 dash 9 step 2. Okay, and voila. We've worked through those, and the authors have give us some more work with the sum and the average functions. Okay, and they're on page 421. He asked us to find the sum and average of all the credit limits in the employees table. Okay, it's page 421. I'll just look up here real quickly. And here we are. We're going to select the sum credit line and the average from the employees table. We're going to find out how much money in total have we got there for on a credit limit, and what's the average amount per record. Okay, and that's all that's going on. Now, a little bit different. Let's go ahead and run this, because I can't remember if we have to run these and see. No, we're not doing a select into, so we're good. Here's an example of the problem with one of additions, and this is something that you have to be careful with. Although most commercial products will have solved this problem for you. This is over at the bottom, page 423, and he gives you an example of the problems of access in terms of its ability to handle the AND operator, okay? And it's probably just quicker. Well, okay. If you go over to page 424, well, let's just run that query at the bottom of page 443. This 11, they'll show you the problem with addition. And they give us a beginning table and ending table, so we'll do that. No big deal. No big deal. I click create, query design. Here we are. Now we're going to run that. And we get 21, okay, and we get 31. And those are the rows that we added. So what we did is, go back in here to the query. Well, I run the same thing when I show you this. We're going to select the sum of column 2, and we're going to add it to the sum of column 3. And then I'm going to use a column alias as columns added first. And we get that output over at the top, over at page 424. Then we're going to sum column 2 plus column 3. Now, I want you to notice something here. Look at the order of operation that's going on. We're going to sum the sum of these two columns. We've got them buried inside of a parentheses, and the order of operations, we work in there first, then we apply the function as rows added first. And we're going to get that from that section 1111 table, okay? And so we end up with the rows added. And let's go in this query, and this is, we're going to call this 1111. Okay? And I want to go into the design view of it. And notice what's going on. Here's something very interesting. Okay. I pop this all the way out so you can see it. Now, here we got the primary key, then we have a column 2 and column 3, and they show us that over there at the beginning table at the top of page 424. And then we use the columns, okay? And we sum them. We sum column 2 plus column 3. Then we do a second thing. We add the two columns, their total together, and sum it up. And we get 21 and 13. Now, just so you can see what the author's conveying real quickly, if you look at the beginning table, if you take column 2 and you add it up, it adds up to 6. Okay? If you take column 3 and you add it up, even with the null, it comes to 9 to 15. You say, well, where in the world did you get the other numbers? Well, those are the operations that we were doing. Okay? And we're adding those columns. And he shows you the explanation at the bottom of page 424, where you get 6 plus 15 is 21, okay, and how you got the 6, and then how you get the 15. Now, what you're doing is, if you have your book, you'll see a column, that first row is 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 5 is 10, plus 8 is 18, plus 3 is 21. It counts the nulls as a 0, or it ignores the nulls. That's how you get that 21. Okay? So authors wanted to show you that. Then they show you the correct way to do it. And if you look over on page 427, and actually we'll go back up here to the view, and I'll show you here real quickly. All right. He shows us the correct way, and that is we ignore the nulls. We use the NZ function, okay? And what he does, in fact, we don't ignore the nulls. My apologies. The NZ means I treat them like a 0, okay? And so he shows us the correct method there at the bottom of page 421, and the results we get the 21 and the 21, okay? You'll notice up at the middle of page 425, you see an NVL function that's kind of highlighted in the text. That's Oracle's way of handling nulls and treating them as a 0. Okay? And he said, man, if I was working with a big set of data and I have a lot of nulls and I treat them as 0, is it possible I'm going to get some really spurious or some really anomalous results? Yes. When you're a manager and you start getting reports, be they paper reports, you'll get digital reports, hopefully, and you start seeing, then ask yourself, what origin, and you see some gaps or zeros, you know there's a null, you know that there's an issue of a null, okay? So that's 1111. And again, now I'm just going to walk you through because we're going to be running out of some time here. And we did start early, and I do appreciate those of you who are here. Okay, it's encouraging when I see a lot of you here for a very simple reason. You're spending your time and your money and the time of money of people who've invested in you, including the names of those people in all those rooms, including the name of the people on our building. They didn't have to give us that money, but you in recognition of their gift, you're a class. You work hard. You study. That's the best way to honor their memory. Okay, and they gave us those gifts because they want people out there in the world of business who love God, who will be salt and light, who will be the people who live their lives out using Christ as an example. And you'll do that and be able to do that in so many ways. You'll be astounded. Well, over on page 429, he talks about 11. He gives us 11:12, and here we're using the no-nulls, and we'll just run the query. Why not? And we'll talk about it for you real quickly. We're going to do the NZ, which is no nulls, and then we're going to take tax, and then we're going to take 0.07 times the price times the quantity, and then we're going to add that to the shipping and to get the figure for the total invoices. And they show you that there on page 429. All right. There's, again, and we'll just run this. And this will be 11:12. So we'll copy this. But notice what we're doing here. We're counting the nulls. We're treating them like zeros so we can handle them effectively. And then we'll do some aggregating, and we'll run it. Here we go. Oh, and I've got a price. I'm getting a parameter error with price. I'm going to put in, 2. And quantity, I'll put in 2. And the tax, let's just see what's happened. We got a parameter issue going on here and ship it. And I'm going to run into a question. We probably had to do something there, and it went crazy on me. Okay. I'm sure I preserved mine, all right? I've got my 1111. What did we get? What did we do? Where did we go wrong? Well, let's see. We got a parameter query on every one of those. And we changed it to a 0. And we used any zeros there. Okay. And I'm looking here at 429. I'm looking at the beginning table and then the total invoices. If I had a bunch of these, I can tell you what I would do is I'd export this. I'd export it, the data over into Excel if I had a large number of cases and do the computation there. Because I'm getting, and I think the reason that I'm getting some parameter errors here is because there's some, I've got price. Okay. Let me look here. Yeah, I'm looking at the balance of the parentheses. They're okay. That's weird. And why it's not running. Okay. Try it again. Maybe I didn't cut and paste like I should have. This is, I think, going to be 1112. With the sum, the price times the quantity, plus no nulls, the tax, 0.7 times price times quantity. So far, that looks good. And I don't know why it's being temperamental, but it is. As total invoices. You know what I did? Dumb. It helps to have the whole query. All right. One more time, I demonstrated that I can be an idiot. So there we go, query design. My apologies for sweating you through that one. Helps to have the from statement in there, and there it is. Okay. You did a little bit of work there, but you know, I'd say again, if you have a large number of cases, I'd put it out into Excel if I wanted to do some more with it. That was my fault. I did not include the last line from the shipping. That's why I continued to get parameter errors, because the query was desperately asking me, where did you get this? Okay. The remainder of chapter 11, okay, and we're coming down to we've run a little bit over, but the remainder has 11:13. I think you can see what we're doing there with the select data. We count the number of nulls, and they've got distinct dates there for Oracle and how to do that. Access SQL, they show us a little bit more of a convoluted series of steps there. And so you have to do a workaround with the two of those. And that's over on page 432. You do the step one, and then you do step two. Well, we'll close it off with that. And I'm going to call this 11:13. And then, of course, you'll want to upload your work to the upload part. I'll probably upload this. So I'm going to create, okay, I'm going to go in here and get 14. There are 2 steps. Okay. And this is 14, step 1. I think I already have it. Yeah. I'll click create. And this is the first step. Into temp date. We have an undefined format in the expression. Oh, I hate that. Well, finicky. I'm not going to try to troubleshoot this. You can play around with it. As long as you got to 1311, we're good to go. And that'll do it. So again, I'll make some files visible that you can upload, or you can upload the one you worked today. That's my preference. And away you go. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate your hard work. And see everybody on Thursday.